Oh, hi my funky friends. Welcome back to the final video of our Over the Garden Wall series. I'm kind of sad, I'm not gonna lie, because I feel like I could talk about and like create things around Over the Garden Wall year round, but we have other holidays to explore, other things to do, a bunch of other Delulu dreams to chase. So I'm going to end with this video, but we can't move on from Over the Garden Wall until we've actually done a deep dive of the story and the elements and the things I love about the show. So make sure you catch up on the other videos if you haven't yet, where I cover Over the Garden Wall related things. But if you're new here, my name is Asia and we do a lot of things here, but one thing's for sure, we're always bringing the vibes. Okay, are we excited? Because I'm excited. First of all, I feel like I can't move forward until I know for sure that if you're hanging out here still, if you're still watching, please make sure you've already seen this show. Because if not, I don't know what to tell you. We are entering spoiler territory for the 10th anniversary of Over the Garden Wall. I guess I can give like a little synopsis of what the show is, so you can be intrigued. And if you haven't watched the show yet, please save this video for later and then go watch it. It'll take you like an hour and a half, maybe an hour and 45 minutes, and then come back and theorize with me and discuss all the themes, all those fun things. All right, here's my pitch for if you have not if you've not listened or if you've not watched Over the Garden Wall yet, because you really have to make it happen. It's so good. Okay, so basically the story is a 10 episode long miniseries. I don't know if it's the only miniseries by Cartoon Network, but it's definitely the first. But basically you are following two brothers that are lost in the woods. You are just as lost as they are, because you start the story not knowing what's going on for sure. Like, they don't really give you enough context of like the background of these characters, how they find themselves in the forest. Like, you really don't have a lot to go on. So the way that they set the story, it makes you feel lost with them, which I think is super cool. And through each of these episodes, which are only like 10 to 15 minutes long, depending on the episode, you uncover so much heartache and like love and angst and fear from each of the characters and how they develop. And it's essentially a story about like brotherhood and coming of age and how to be brave, how to have hope. There's some like great messaging throughout the entire series. It is set in like a very like fairy tale-esque, like Grimm's fairy tale setting. You're in the woods, you come across a woodsman, and yeah, you're just trying to find your way home. The like setting of the show is very like, it's weird because it's very eclectic, but somehow it makes sense together. Even when it doesn't make sense, even when there are super random settings that you're like, wait, what the heck is happening? It does work within like the frame of the story. But it's got some really excellent voice actors, and anyone from Elijah Wood to Christopher Lloyd to John Cleese to Tim Curry. There are literally so many like insane actors, and just beautiful music. I believe there was an Emmy nomination. I don't remember if they won the Emmy. Someone can let me know in the comments, but they definitely got nominated for best music for a animated miniseries or just an animated series. And it's just so good. It's by Patrick McHale, who also had involvement in Adventure Time and other like really iconic animated series. So this one is a really short story. Like I said, it only will take an hour and 45 minutes ish of your time, and like it's short enough for us to do an entire viewing party for with a group setting with children. And yeah, that's another thing that I love about it too, because I mean, if it wasn't obvious, like because this aired on Cartoon Network, this was definitely a family friendly piece, and it's one of those like very rich pieces of media that if you're a kid or if you are not a kid, you would enjoy the themes and the storyline. It's just so good. Okay, hopefully if you haven't seen it, that gets you excited or at least a little bit intrigued about this miniseries and you give it a watch yourself, you can watch it on Hulu. And if you have a Hulu subscription, and I believe it's for purchase on Amazon, I want to say, maybe not, I don't remember. But now it's like really popular again, and I saw like DVDs. If you have a DVD player or a Blu-ray player, or I don't know, a console that can play discs, that might be your way to gain access to it. But I feel like it's pretty accessible these days with everyone celebrate the 10th anniversary of this miniseries. I'm a little bit salty that we did not learn about this miniseries as it aired. I found out about it 2 years later, introduced to the series by some friends, and then we started doing our annual viewing parties, and our annual viewing party anniversary date will never like line up in years with the show, but hopefully Patrick McHale will still appreciate the fact that we are keeping his story alive. But I want to unpack like just a little bit of what I love about this show. I honestly, like, you know how there's some random like nuggets of, I don't know, some niche topic that you can talk about for hours and hours and hours and hours. I don't have many of those, but in addition to pretty much any Studio Ghibli film, which we got to do a video series on that because I think that'd be a lot of fun. Over the Garden Wall is one of the things that I have like hyper fixated on. When I first was introduced to the series, I took a very long time and watched so many YouTube videos, read so many Reddit posts, read so many articles, and I feel like as it's become like more and more popular, there's some just like new perspectives that I have gleaned from, and I want to share some of my favorite things with you. It was like so hard to edit down to like what I wanted to talk about today, but I feel like I can't go forever and ever and ever. Maybe I'll do like some fun stream down the road one day and just go on and on and on for to my heart's content about Over the Garden Wall, but we'll see how much we get through today. But we are entering into spoiler territory, so if you've not watched a show, please pause this, save this for later, go watch it later, go watch the show first, and then come back. Let me know if you do watch it, because it's like one of the few things I love, like paying it forward in life is like, please go watch a show. I promise you won't be disappointed. Hopefully I don't overhype it, but I think it's excellent. It's one of my favorite pieces of media ever. So, okay, let's start by talking about the characters. There are a ton of characters in the show, even though it's a mini series, even though every episode is only 10 to 15 minutes long. You have so many excellent, unique, weird, very specific characters across all the different episodes with all their eclectic storylines. But I want to talk about the main characters first that you see basically throughout the entire series. First off, let's talk about the brothers. We have 𝖼, who is a like teenage, very angsty teenager, and he like views life with the glass half empty, and that glass is like this very ornate like champagne flute that he found and knows like what era it came from, and it's like a real antique and not a replica. Like that's 𝖼. And accompanying 𝖼 is Greg, who is his younger half brother, and I want to say Greg is probably 8 to 10. I don't really know. He's just younger, much younger than 𝖼. And if 𝖼 sees glass half empty, Greg sees the world with a glass that is not only like overflowing, the glass has somehow magically turned into this crazy fountain that also doubles as a water slide. I think that's how Greg views the world. So we have these like very contrasting characters, and we see, like, even though, like I said, this is a short series, you see some really interesting character development. I do think that Greg and 𝖼 act as like foil characters for each other a little bit, just because they view the world so differently. And I want to talk about some themes, but let me get through the characters first. I'm trying to like pace myself right now. Another character is Beatrice. Beatrice is, I guess we're in spoilers, so I'm just gonna like whatever, talk about it. Beatrice is a really snarky little bluebird who once was a human, and she accidentally turned her family into bluebirds because she threw a rock at a bluebird, and a witch cursed her entire family. So she is very distrusting of the world, where I think like we're just like always is thinking like nothing will go right for him, and like very melodramatic. She's just like not trusting of anyone or anything. And so it's like really interesting to see how the series like as the series goes on, you see her heart grow a little bit for the brothers, and yeah, it's just like an interesting like way that they all interact with each other. So these three are, you know, taking us really through the story, but in the background we have these very like key characters that you do see every episode, but they just aren't traveling with the kids, or the kids and the bird. I guess Beatrice is a kid too, just in bird form. The woodsman is a little bit mysterious guide that meets the travelers at key points in their journey, and he is very like tough on the outside, but like in a paternal way. He's not like aggressive with the brothers. He wants to protect them. He cares for their well-being, but he really expresses the danger of them being in this forest that he thinks is like going to be the end of these brothers if they're like not strong in body and mind. And he really puts a lot of, not pressure, but the responsibility to lead well on Wirt, because he's the elder child. And he just is like kind of in the background, always looking out for the boys. And, you know, obviously there are times where Wirt is mistrusting of the woodsman, and that, you know, ebbs and flows depending on what is going on in the story. But he is like very dutiful, very caring, but also very like heartbroken as well. And then the last character that we see all the way throughout, well, actually no, I lied, there are like two more characters. Hold on, I almost missed one that was a companion. Everyone's gonna be so upset with me for not including him right away. My favorite character, Jason Funderburker the frog. The frog is Greg's companion. I mean, he's everyone's companion, but in the beginning he's only viewed as Greg's companion. He's a frog that is just like hanging out. Sometimes he's carrying him in his pants, sometimes he's on his head, sometimes he's just hopping around, sometimes he's wearing socks. And every episode he's credited as a different name, because one of the bits of the show is throughout the entire series Greg is trying to think of the best name for this frog, and so he trial runs a lot of these names, and so every name that he tries each episode, the frog is credited as that. But by the end he's called Jason Funderburker the frog, spelled differently than Jason Funderburker, who's a different character. But the frog is you know, we find out in the end, our narrator. He's really the one that's telling the story. He's got a little bit of a omniscient perspective, a little bit. And yeah, he's just kind of like our guide. I don't know. He's an interesting character for sure. Obviously, he doesn't have very many speaking lines, but when you make the connection that the voiceover that you get in the beginning of the series matches up with the singing voice in Lullaby in Frogland, you realize that, okay, he's the one that knows like everything that's going on. And then the last character, who doesn't, I mean, technically he is traveling too, but not traveling with this party, the Beast. The Beast is kind of what nightmares are made of. He wants the souls of the children. He tries to get the woodsman to keep the boys in the forest and kind of break their will, so he can essentially, he's like tricked the woodsman to think that like the only way to keep his daughter alive, or the spirit of his daughter alive, is to essentially do whatever the beast says. There's a lot more nuance to that, but ultimately he has to like listen to the beast's call. So he's the antagonist, he's in the background, he's the real big bad. But yeah, so these are like the main characters of the story. Okay, now that I've listed like some of these like main characters, I want to talk about like symbolism with the characters. I don't know if I'm gonna talk much about the frog with symbols, though I'm sure there are some. I would love to know your theories. If you're super into Over the Garden Wall, if you have any theories on the frog, I would love to expand my mind on that. But I think one very notable one is this idea of like hope for like the desired outcome that you want to happen, and versus like a distrust or a lack of hope. I believe that Greg fully embodies and symbolizes hope, as we see in the entire series. Even though Wirt is tasked as like the leader and he's like trying to bring the boys home, almost time and time again, Greg is actually the person who saves the day, and he does it with so much optimism. He's not very like self-indulgent. He's just kind of going with the flow and knowing that everything's going to work out in the end. He has a very positive attitude all the way to the end. When we see the beast, like, you know, takes hold of Greg, even that was like not what the beast had planned, because he the whole time saw that the weakest link was Wirt, because Wirt was losing hope. But instead he like Jedi mind tricked Greg and used his optimism against him and tricked him to think that like, oh, if I help you, you'll help bring me and my brother home. And so we just see the whole way through, even when the beast is in the process of turning Greg into an edelwood tree, we see Greg is still so positive. And in contrast, we see Wirt, like I said, being kind of the opposite, lacking hope. But not only lacking hope, I think more so he had a like distorted view of the world, of reality. He didn't see himself as a leader, but more than that, he viewed Greg as like not helpful. He was never able to see how his younger brother was always for him. We see the way that he interacts with the woodsman. He misinterprets the woodsman's actions as like antagonistic, when really the woodsman was like just out caring for him. He was very self-involved. As like things are going on, he really had a hard time viewing the threat that was happening to everyone else, like contextualized in their perspectives. Like he always was viewing how he was being mistreated and how he was the exception, experiencing all the same exact negative experiences that everyone else in his traveling party was going through. And you know, any act that he gave like towards like, you know, saving the day was typically an accident. He kind of would literally stumbled upon the gorilla in the Skulltown Follies episode. He wasn't trying to do anything in particular. He just tripped on a shoelace. And basically like it was everyone else around him who took charge or took the initiative, and he was kind of too afraid to step forward. We also see, you know, when the big reveal that the brothers were not from that whatever people say it is purgatory, could be other things, a different dimension, a symbol for death and dying, whatever it may be. He when we see him and his brother in the real world, we see like every, you know, experience happened that night, on that Halloween night, and Greg interpret all of those experiences as positive, while was interpreting them as completely negative and everyone being against him. Even to the point of like the punchline of he's the entire time talking about how Jason Funderburker is this perfect person who, if the girl that he has a crush on, Sarah, is like talking to Jason Funderburker, there's no hope for him. But then when we see Jason Funderburker in person after all of these episodes, we're like, this is the guy that you're afraid of. I think you're okay. I don't think you should be threatened. But because his entire like perspective is so like distorted, he's not able to experience the world and experience relationships as pure as they are, well, because he's just so doubtful. So that's what we see we're in. And then when he actually takes his first like truly selfless, not self-involved action or like decision seriously, when he decides to like look for Greg and put his discomfort beside, put his like feelings towards Beatrice beside, he is able to eventually like truly like save the day because of his attitude towards you know, this negative thing that's happening to him. And then in addition, we see Beatrice, who I think is also like, I would say that she is symbolic to regarding like trust, obviously, because she is very manipulative of the boys initially, because she's trying to use them to fulfill this task that the Adelaide, the good woman of the wood, who is not so good, tasked her to find these two boys in exchange for like turning her family back into bluebirds. And we just see shame in Beatrice, because she refuses, like this whole time she's refused to go home until she can change her family back, or I guess not home, but like she refuses to see her family again until she can like come up with a solution, because she feels ashamed that she was the reason why they got turned into bluebirds. We see, you know, that shame like really weigh on her as they're getting closer to Adelaide. And obviously she's like built not just rapport with the brothers, and it definitely worked, but like true friendship. And so by the end, or by that point in the story, we see her regret her decision, and like actually she's not self-serving, she does have a heart. And so it's just interesting to see how that plays out. For the woodsman, I think like duty is the name of the game for what he symbolizes. Like sometimes I think like while being dutiful can be great, when you are blindly dutiful, and like this, by dutiful I mean like this idea of like white knuckling through you know, whatever obstacles that may come your way, instead of like taking a step back and thinking through like, is this the way we should continue? You white knuckle it because it's your duty to continue. His whole thing is his daughter dies, and the beast tells him, hey, I can keep your daughter's soul alive in this lantern if you are just like my woodsman forevermore in the woods. And he does that in order to keep his daughter's flame alive. So he has a duty to her. He doesn't want her memory, like he can't let go of that memory. And so he just continues and continues. And it's not until he encounters these brothers that he realizes like he's, you know, like unintentionally but still actively like reaping the souls of the children that were like lost before them for the sake of this lantern, which we find out all that's a farce anyways, because it's not is the soul of the beast that's in the lantern, and he is just tricking people into keeping him alive. And then lastly, of course, we have the beast. I think the beast represents capitalizing on insecurity, capitalizing on essentially hopelessness. He subverts intentions of any of these travelers and the woodsman, and really capitalizes on what are the weak points that like can potentially like affect your spirit, affect your resolve to continue to live ultimately. And the irony is like he's doing that so he can continue to live. I see honestly the beast and the woodsman and 𝤣 as almost like, I don't know how to word this correctly, and like if I'm not using the right terminology, I apologize, but I feel like they are like in a prism together. They're like cut from the same gem, but they all are like different versions of the same weakness, because you know, obviously a very like way that's really clear is when the woodsman is like keeping this flame alive, and that flame is connected to the beast. The beast tries to get 𝤣 to take the place of the woodsman. So like they're all kind of revolving this obligation to do something that's wrong, but that feels like sacrificial love in a sense, like just really like thwarting and twisting the mind. So definitely I see that a lot in like the woodsman is kind of like what 𝤣 could have been like had he decided to like, yeah, take up the mantle, take up the lantern to save his brother the way that the beast intended. But also I think like 𝤣's self-involvement, like he just was like, could not get out of his own head and could not get out of his own like way that he was experiencing life. Like he was very selfish, honestly, like throughout a lot of the series. And I think like obviously the beast is like the epitome of selfishness and like gleaning off of the life of others to sustain your own life. I think like the beast was doing that very intentionally, whereas I think 𝤣 was doing that unintentionally. So it was just really cool to see a diversion of like this path that 𝤣 could have gone on in contrast to the beast and to the woodsman. So those are like the general symbols I see, or some of them at least. Like I'm kind of editing down in my brain as we're talking through this because we've already been talking for such a long time. But I do want to talk through one of the like big theories that many enthusiasts of Over the Garden Wall have come to love. And I think we continue to bang that drum until, I don't know, Patrick McHale says something about it. And this is that Over the Garden Wall is a modern children's retelling of Dante's Inferno. When this was brought up to Patrick McHale once, I think he worded his response something similar to like, if that is what helps contextualize and make sense to people, then like I'm cool with I think that's awesome. But I'm already butchering that. But basically everyone was inferring the fact that he didn't say no means that it's probably true. And who knows, this could be a stretch, but I really love like thinking about this story through this lens. And so I did write it down just so I make sure I say all of these right. But basically episode 1, which is the old gristmill, we're entering into Dante's Inferno, and then as we move into episode 2, which is Hard Times of the Husking Bee, we are in limbo. And the reason why I'll talk about like a little bit of the argument of like why each circle of hell would correlate with these episodes, but you know, limbo is where obviously we're kind of between life and death, and we find out these skeleton people that just wear pumpkin costumes or whatever, they are also in limbo because they're not dead, but they're not alive for sure, so they're in limbo. So that's why this was considered the limbo before we enter into the circles of hell. And so episode 3 is School Time Follies, and this is correlates with the second circle of hell, which is represents the deadly sin of lust. And the way that people defend that is that Miss Langtry is obsessively yearning for her I guess at this point boyfriend, because she doesn't even know that he's trying to propose, who she's only known for, is it 8 days? Less, you know, a very short time based on the song. Yeah, the way that she longs for him and yearns for him is like lust. And then we move into episode 4, which is Songs of the Dark Lantern. This one represents the third circle of hell, which is gluttony. And the argument for that is the entire time, starting with when the boys are like in the cart, in the hay cart, Greg is so hungry. He's just like, I need to eat something. Can you make eggs from a duck? And he says the iconic banana nut duck bread line. And the entire time they're in the tavern, we see him bring loads and loads and loads of food onto their table. And obviously, like, some of it's like just comedic, but the fact that like every scene, which is only like a few seconds, that it cuts to Greg, that food is gone and he's getting more food, but you never actually see them eat. You just see like the plates empty. And so they say that this is what represents gluttony. And then moving on to episode 5, which is called Mad Love. This is the 4th circle of hell, which is greed. And I think it's pretty clear that Unky Endicott is he's a rich man and he boasts in his wealth. And at the end of that episode, when the horse is when Fred the horse is like questioning whether or not like there was a violent struggle that happened in Marguerite Gray's like wing, or I guess like her mansion, the like mansion that like connects, he gets really upset and he's like, do you know what these filthy hands have done for this money? So pretty clear that one can definitely be greed. And I'm saying these like circles of hell in order, so I think this is just like adding to the argument that like I don't think this is unintentional. I'm pretty sure this is intentional. Okay, so next episode is Lullaby in Froglands, episode 6. And this is correlated with the circle of hell, the 5th circle of hell, which represents anger, or where anger abides. And the the anger here is basically everything that happens in the actual boat scene, in the ferry scene, when the frogs are upset with Greg and Wirt and a frog that can sing. So there's like some anger there. And then also, more importantly, when they're actually at Adelaide's and we see Wirt get upset with Beatrice because she like betrayed him. So there's one. And then next episode is The Ringing of the Bell commands you. This represents the 6th circle of hell, which has heresy, and heresy being obviously what's going on with Lorna. Not good. So moving on from that, episode 8, Babes in the Wood. This is the crazy dream sequence. Which is my favorite like piece of knowledge here or like whatever lore for this episode was the fact that Patrick McHale did admit that he purposely wrote this episode this way to just mess with everyone, because it's like obviously a very tense moment. And before we continue in the story, let's just have this insanely bizarre like dream sequence happen for Greg. And this one is the 7th circle of hell, which is violence. And the violence is obviously the altercation between Greg and the old North Wind, who's bad. Okay. Second to last episode, episode 9, Into the Unknown, which is where we find out, where the boys are actually from. This is Fraud. And I love that like, I mean, beyond just being spooky, I love that like Halloween is the setting of the time setting for this series. And I mean, Fraud is all about like being something you're not, or pretending to be someone else, and they're literally all wearing costumes. So I just thought that was so brilliant, the way that they like wove that in. And then the last episode, episode 10, The Unknown, Treachery, is the 9th circle of hell. And of course that's the interaction we see at the end with, I mean, honestly, with all of the main characters, but definitely between the Beast and all of them being treacherous. The other reason, besides just like the themes of every episode, the fact that as we progress like chronologically, as like time passes in the woods, it's getting colder and colder. That is pretty similar to Dante's Inferno, because the theory there is like, oh, hell actually gets like frozen not like hot as you get like deeper and deeper into hell. So there's a bunch of like other like things people have said regarding this theory, but I just think it's so strong that I can't deny it. You know, there's too many things that like seem to correlate, but maybe one day, maybe Patrick, for the 10th anniversary of Over the Garden Wall, maybe Patrick McHale will let us know for real. Like, just give us something. But yeah, I love this theory. But even if you like don't agree with that theory, I think this like story is so powerful on its own. I just love the way that we see Greg be truly a foil to Wirt by revealing all of these areas that like Wirt is just like not seeing the world correctly. I think it's so sweet and funny how Greg just like does everything out of care for his brother because he thinks it'll make his brother happy or it'll make his brother's life better. When we are in the 9th episode, Into the Unknown, where we're in like the real world, everything that Greg does, even if he's like not understanding the context of what's going on, like he's trying to get Wirt with Sarah. He keeps trying to like put Wirt in situations where he's hanging out with Sarah because he knows that he likes her. Something when I just watched Over the Garden Wall the most recent time, I don't know why it took me so long to realize in the episode The Ringing of the Bell, when Wirt is like getting a little chummy and there's like a little flirty something or other happening with Lorna, Greg is like very like skeptical, and I did think that was funny. Like I remember noting like, oh, that's whatever, that's funny. He's like, what's going on here? But when I think about like how excited he was about Sarah, he's not exactly against the idea of Wirt liking someone. So I realized I was like, I think he was that way because he knows that Wirt likes Sarah, and he's like, you don't need to be messing around with Lorna when you have Sarah at home. So I love that. I love all these like little tidbits. Also at the end, you know, there's the question is always like, okay, did the boys make him back? Did they not? Because definitely all of this is happening while these boys are drowning, literally like drowning in this river, or lake or whatever. And, it's just interesting, like when they're brought back into the real world, and obviously it's very rushed, like I think purposely. You're kind of wondering like, okay, was that just a dream that they experienced together? A weird dream where they both like understand each other's references. But then when Greg is like showing the frog around and shaking him around, you see his belly light up, which like correlates to when he swallows the bell from the Ringing of the Bell episode, and when you ring that bell it glows because it's like a magical bell. So I feel like that is really interesting. I did see one argument about like, you know, with the Dante's Inferno reference, people talk about Over the Garden Wall as like, or you know, this like scene in the woods as purgatory, and how like maybe that's not totally true because there are like some of these characters who like just live there. They don't move on from purgatory into heaven or to hell, or you know, whatever it would be in this scenario. But I thought that was interesting. I still think like we can view the unknown as like a in between, whether it's like in between realities or what, like that obviously is like up for interpretation. But I just think this is such a great story about like love and trust, and the irony is like Wirt does not see the world for what it is, even though they're like obviously in this place that's not like the reality that we know and that they know. And I don't know, I think that's just like an interesting concept that like even when everything is crazy around you, you can be grounded in truth, and that truth can like move you, like give you the motivation to move forward, which I feel like that in itself is exactly what hope is like knowing that like while what's going on in reality in your life right now can be just so messed up and so terrible. You know what's like at the end of that journey, or you know what's beyond this this trial, and that is what gives you the hope to move forward. And I'll link it in the details, but I did write a little article about Over the Garden Wall that's much more concise than this. And it basically explores that, like how it represents like hope in dark times. And so I think like one thing that's really cool about just like storytelling in general, but definitely it's like heightened, I believe, in like family friendly stories or, you know, like children's stories, is like these characters are kind of like caricature I can't say that word, caricatures of like, you know, more maybe grounded characters, but you know, obviously there's an element of entertainment there, of like getting like catching kids' attention. But with that, I think like we can see ourselves in multiple characters. I think like we all have a tendency to be like distrusting, like Beatrice. We all have a tendency to be really self-focused and like not be able to see hope in the world, just like Wirt. I think we tend to not mindlessly, but kind of mindlessly white knuckle through life without like taking a step to think about what's going on around us. Like the woodsman, he was so focused on what he was doing, he wasn't realizing how it was affecting everyone negatively, even if he had like a very, very pure intention. And like with all of that, we also have an inner child that is like hopeful and not tainted by the world. And I really think that's like a really beautiful metaphor for like how we can have like our inner child like be hopeful and not like stifle that with like the experiences of our life, the experiences of the lives around us that have affected us. I think that concept, or you know, that idea can really grow like patience in us and ultimately love, I guess, but like just have like patience for each other and patience for ourselves. I love how patient Greg is with Wirt and with everything that's going on around him. Obviously, like it's so easy to write off like, oh, he's a kid, so he can't experience, he like doesn't know all like everything that's like a real threat. But be that as it may, he was experiencing everything in the same way, at least like physically speaking. Like he was experiencing the same trauma and the same trials as Wirt and as Beatrice, but because of his disposition towards the world, he was able to like move forward without fear and with hope. And I just think that's just such a cool message. Anyways, I don't know. I feel like I need to stop here because I can keep talking about this and like unpack every single character, every single episode. And maybe if we are into that, like maybe next fall we can deep dive into Over the Garden Wall more. Let me know in the comments. I'm happy to expand on anything, but I did want to just take a moment post the party to enjoy and process through this beautiful story, Over the Garden Wall, with you all. I'm also really excited because at the time of this recording, this is before the little Aardman and like stop motion animation special that's supposed to be dropping on November 3rd. It's literally, I think like, I'm pretty sure it's 2 minutes long, or maybe 3 minutes, but I'm pretty sure it's just 2 minutes. But I'm excited for it anyways. I want to know if you are also into the Over the Garden Wall, and if so, are you as obsessive about it as I am? Or what are the things that you're obsessive about, just generally speaking? It doesn't have to be Over the Garden Wall, but I love like when people can rant and deep dive on topics that they love, and thank you for giving me a moment to deep dive on a topic that I love. I think it does like actually like go really well with like what we're doing here on these vlogs. Like I'm all about you know, being, you know, entering the world with hope, and I think that like that can translate into like how we experience rest, how we experience play, how we experience just like building relationships when the world is broken. And I hope that this little bit of joy is parted to you. And I hope that you did enjoy the caring and cozy vibes here, and hope that you're able to give cozy and caring vibes to others. I love you all so much. I'll see you later. Bye. I'm probably gonna go watch Over the Garden Wall again for the millionth time, but okay, bye.